The story begins with a young man named Sungwoo, who arrives at school after a long commute by train and bus, already exhausted and irritated. He thinks bitterly that commuting to school is pure hell. Just then, Hanho shows up beside him and lightly mocks his frustration. He brings up his time in the special forces and implies that Sungwoo should be tougher than this. Sungwoo fires back, thinking that Hanho has no right to comment until he has actually served in the military. Hanho suddenly grows serious and makes a remark about Korea eventually unifying. Sungwoo dismisses it immediately, waving it off as nonsense. He then points out that Hanho has managed to avoid enlistment due to personal circumstances, including his relationship with a woman named Myung. At the mention of her name, Hanho visibly deflates and asks that she not be brought up. Sungwoo, however, continues casually, recalling how he warned Hanho 3 years earlier about becoming a campus couple with Myung. The two walk toward their respective classes in silence. Hanho's gaze drifts upward, lingering above the campus library, while Sungwoo begins to wonder if his teasing has gone too far. Without turning around, Sungwoo awkwardly asks if Hanho has started crying. Hanho does not respond to the jab. Instead, his hand lifts shakily as he points toward the sky above the library. At Hanho's urging, Sungwoo looks up, joking to himself that maybe the sky reminds Hanho of Myung's face. For a brief moment, faint text hangs in the air, forming the words, "Downloading monster, 99%. Sungwoo misses it entirely, as the message vanishes the instant he begins to focus. No matter how insistently Hanho tries to explain what he saw, Sungwoo refuses to believe him. He convinces Hanho that it must have been a hallucination, and they continue walking. Hanho suggests getting coffee together, but Sungwoo declines, worried about being late. They part ways, and Sungwoo heads to his lecture room, room 404. Sungwoo sinks into his seat and listens to the professor droning on. Fatigue sets in quickly, and he regrets turning down the coffee earlier. He struggles to keep his eyes open, but eventually they close. At that moment, the first message from the system appears before him. Startled, he rubs his eyes and doubts what he has just seen. Suddenly, everything plunges into darkness. All electronic devices shut down at once. The blackout is unnaturally thick, so dense that even looking out the classroom windows reveals nothing. The only visible things are the floating messages from the system. As class cards scatter through the air, hesitation and confusion spread among the students. Minsu becomes the first to act. He selects a warrior class card, and a sword materializes out of thin air. The sight terrifies and stuns the rest of the class. Watching this unfold, Sungwoo rapidly pieces together what the cards represent. Without hesitation, he snatches the Necromancer card just before the selection period ends. The system announces that anyone who failed to choose a class card will have another opportunity in the future. Shortly after, the blackout lifts. As students crowd around Minsu's sword in disbelief, Sungwoo remains stunned by the realization that he has become a necromancer. There is no immediate proof of his new class. No weapon or object appears before him, leaving him confused. Before he can think further, the classroom door bursts open. A student collapses inside, screaming for help. A goblin clings to his back, its dagger buried deep in the student's flesh. The room freezes in terror as the goblin launches a dozen savage attacks, killing the young man in moments. The class scrambles backward in panic, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the monster. Sungwoo remains rooted in place. He glances toward Minsu, quietly checking whether Minsu remembers him. Minsu panics and demands to know what he is supposed to do. Sungwoo's thoughts sink into despair as he becomes convinced they are all doomed. The goblin charges straight at Sungwoo. Every instinct tells him to run, but he forces himself to stay. He realizes that turning his back would only lead to the same fate as the fallen student. He spins around, grabs a chair, and raises it high, intending to smash it down on the goblin's back. The weight surprises him mid-swing, and he realizes too late that he is holding a combined chair and desk. The goblin shrieks and leaps again. Panic surges through Sungwoo, but he manages to hoist the heavy furniture overhead and slam it down with everything he has. The impact kills the goblin instantly. A notification appears, awarding him 10 coins. Sungwoo understands that the world now operates like a video game. His classmates stare at him in a mixture of shock and horror as another message appears, stating that the dead will become his subordinates. A status screen opens, displaying information about a goblin skeleton. At the same time, students shout warnings and point behind him. From the goblin's corpse, bluish-green energy erupts and swirls around an indistinct shape. As the glow fades, the remains transform into a skeleton. It lowers itself to one knee before Sungwoo. In that moment, Sungwoo finally understands his class. He is the master of the dead. Sungwoo's first subordinate is kneeling before him, and just then, two goblins suddenly burst into the room. The class erupts into panic at the immediate threat. Sungwoo reacts instinctively and orders his subordinate to engage the monsters. The skeleton moves without hesitation. It fights faithfully against the goblins, clashing with them at close range. During the struggle, its left arm is severed, but it continues to attack despite the damage. Sungwoo quickly realizes that the skeleton will lose if he does not intervene. He searches desperately for a weapon and turns toward Minsu, intending to take the sword that had appeared earlier. Minsu refuses outright, leaving Sungwoo with no weapon to rely on. With no other option, Sungwoo grabs a nearby desk and hurls it at the goblins. The impact distracts them long enough for the one-armed skeleton to regain the upper hand and finish them off. Once the goblins fall, the damaged skeleton turns its skull towards Sungwoo and stares at him, as though waiting for another order or some form of acknowledgement. The silence stretches on. Sungwoo suddenly flinches under its gaze, unsettled by the way it looks at him. He gestures for it to turn away, and the skeleton lowers itself slightly, remaining still in visible disappointment. The remains of the two fallen goblins rise shortly afterward, transforming into skeletons under Sungwoo's control. He now commands 3 subordinates. His classmates bombard him with questions, desperate to understand what is happening. But Sungwoo finds himself unable to answer. Panic spreads further when a girl screams after realizing she cannot reach the police. Sungwoo moves to the window and looks outside. The scene beyond the campus is complete chaos. The destruction confirms his suspicion that what is happening is not limited to their classroom or even their school. The entire country, and possibly the entire world, appears to be experiencing the same catastrophe. The class slowly regains enough composure to act. They agree that staying inside the building is too dangerous and decide to escape. As they leave the classroom, they run straight into several goblins standing over the bodies of other students they have just killed. The sight causes immediate panic. Students scatter in fear, making it easier for the goblins to attack. Just as the monsters are about to strike the fleeing students, Sungwoo's skeletons intercept them. Sungwoo urges the others to run, trusting his subordinates to hold the goblins back. The students flee, splitting up in different directions. He does not try to stop them, believing that each person must make their own choices. He understands that confronting this new world directly is the fastest way to improve his chances of survival. That resolve is tested almost immediately. One of his skeletons is struck down during the fight. Sungwoo desperately urges his remaining subordinates to defeat the goblins. After a brief but violent struggle, they succeed. Sungwoo acknowledges their effort just as a new sensation washes over him, signaling his first level up. Curious, he summons his status screen. His name and class appear alongside various statistics. When he checks the reward for leveling up, 5 cards appear before him. The randomness of the system leaves him staring blankly for a moment before he selects the skill card. The reward grants him control over another undead, increasing his total number of subordinates from 3 to 4. Sungwoo accepts that he does not yet understand everything about this new world. He positions his skeletons around himself, covering his blind spots. Looking out the window again, he sees that the chaos outside shows no sign of easing. Waiting for things to improve is not an option. With that in mind, he prepares to move forward, allowing his subordinates to lead the way back into danger. With danger everywhere and no safety in remaining still, Sungwoo leads his 4 skeleton minions down to a lower floor. One skeleton cautiously takes the lead down the stairs, only to collide with Hanho, who comes running upward clutching a knife. Their eyes meet in shock. Overcome by terror, Hanho screams and reflexively stabs the leading skeleton in the skull. The blow causes the skeleton to clutch its head and stagger. Sungwoo immediately recognizes Hanho. Hanho looks up at him with tears in his eyes and points shakily at the skeletons, confused and frightened. Sungwoo calms his junior and reassures him that the skeletons are under his control. The minions carefully tend to the cracked skull of the injured skeleton, steadying it while Sungwoo stays with Hanho. Sungwoo cannot understand why Hanho chose the thief profession, and briefly feels embarrassed to admit they know each other. The reason soon becomes clear. Hanho selected it simply because it was a 1-star class and the star looked shiny. Sungwoo lets the matter drop, unwilling to destroy Hanho's simple optimism. They decide to find a safe place, reasoning that as long as they walk behind the skeletons, each just over 1.5 meters tall, they should be protected. As they move, a status board appears, announcing a synergy skill. Possessing 5 thief daggers increases critical hit rate and grants an additional 10% gold. Hanho points toward a window, drawing Sungwoo's attention to it, and Sungwoo confirms that he sees it as well. He begins to understand the system more clearly. Matching equipment types grants a dirty buff, while effective combinations provide greater benefits. These buffs apply not only to players, but also to their subordinates. Even without full certainty, Sungwoo realizes his skeleton soldiers are already strong, and even alone, their presence allows him to benefit from party-based effects. The three skeletons at the front suddenly stop. Ahead stands a goblin squad, led by a boss significantly larger than the others, with several smaller goblins following. Because Sungwoo's party includes 4 skeleton soldiers, Death Aura takes effect, reducing the goblin's strength by 30%. Sensing danger, the goblins retreat. Sungwoo feels satisfied, believing luck is on their side. All 4 skeleton soldiers charge at once, overwhelming the goblins and killing several immediately. Hanho watches in excitement, but the moment lasts less than 3 seconds. The goblin captain raises its arm, forming a strange magic circle around its wrist and activating Wild Frenzy, which dramatically boosts the goblin's strength. The tide of battle shifts, and the goblins push back fiercely. Hanho urges retreat, but Sungwoo focuses on the battlefield. He notices the goblins act in perfect coordination under the captain's command, and realizes the source of the problem must be eliminated. Fixing his gaze on the magic circle, he gives an order. A skeleton attacks from above, severing the arm, sustaining the skill. The goblin captain roars and kicks the skeleton away, destroying it, but the buff vanishes. With the goblins weakened again, the remaining skeletons slaughter them. Metallic chimes ring continuously as enemies fall. The captain manages to destroy 1 skeleton before the remaining 3 coordinate and finish it off. Defeating the goblin captain yields 50 gold, plus an extra 10% from Sungwoo's party effect. Afterward, Hanho pants heavily as the captain's loot drops. Among the items is a low-level pig sticker of normal rarity with no effects and a high-rarity wild bracelet. The bracelet grants buffs to skeleton soldiers when fighting goblins, including increased strength and speed. The Wild Frenzy skill is revealed as a D-rank buff that increases damage by 10% and speed by 20% for 10 minutes, with a 1-hour cooldown. Satisfied with the loot, Sungwoo praises his skeleton soldiers. His earlier revulsion is gone. He places a hand on one skeleton's head, and it reacts joyfully, the flames in its eyes curving upward like a smile. The sight unsettles both Sungwoo and Hanho, causing them to step back uneasily. They continue onward and soon find a large group of people gathered together. Sungwoo signals for the skeletons to hide in another room to avoid causing panic. Within the crowd, Lee Jin-suk loudly rallies everyone, claiming attempts are being made to contact the police and that the student council is investigating. A furious girl tries to force open a sealed door, but Jin-suk explains that nothing works and urges calm. Sungwoo recognizes Jin-suk as a senior obsessed with hierarchy and infamous for harassing female students, clearly attempting to assert authority for personal ambition. When Sungwoo approaches the door, Jin-suk shouts at him, then quickly adopts a fake, concerned demeanor. Sungwoo senses something is wrong. Jin-suk recognizes Sungwoo, pretends familiarity with Hanho, and assigns them to defense duty after noticing their weapons. Sungwoo does not refuse. Jin-suk assumes Sungwoo is a spearman based on the pig sticker and questions his usefulness while boasting about killing a goblin and choosing a 2-star defensive warrior class. Sungwoo remains calm while Hanho struggles not to laugh. Minsu then rushes in, reporting goblin sounds upstairs. Jin-suk orders everyone to hide in the cafe while he guards the entrance. Sungwoo leads Hanho away to a sealed door and discovers a magical lock. The barrier can only be removed by defeating a final boss. If the monsters are not challenged within the time limit, they will grow stronger. The remaining time is just over 2 hours. Sungwoo fails to open the door, and Hanho realizes the time limit likely determines everyone's survival. Sungwoo decides waiting for rescue is pointless. Jin-suk pairs Sungwoo and Minsu together as subordinates, insisting they wait. Sungwoo argues that if the disaster is worldwide, no rescue will come. Jin-suk insists the military will intervene, citing Sungwoo's service. Sungwoo knows better but avoids escalating further and walks away despite Jin-suk's threats. Suddenly, Minsu screams as 5 goblins descend the staircase. Jin-suk rallies the group to intercept them. Minsu then points down another hallway, where Sungwoo's skeleton soldiers emerge. Jin-suk panics, but Sungwoo steps forward, clarifies they are not goblins, and advances with his pig-slaughtering spear. Death Aura level 1 takes effect, reducing goblin strength by 30%. Overwhelmed, the goblins attempt to flee, but escape is impossible. For Sungwoo, the hunt has only just begun. Just then, a sudden blinding light draws everyone's attention inside the cafe. Even more unsettling is the sight of goblins attacking one another right in front of them. Sungwoo's skeleton soldiers quickly seize control of the situation. One goblin, still clutching its head in dizziness, is pierced cleanly through the body by Sungwoo's spear. 2 more goblins, pinned down by skeletons, are swiftly killed. Jin-suk freezes in place and retreats backward with Minsu, intending to escape. Sungwoo, however, presses forward relentlessly, destroying goblins one after another. 3 are eliminated outright. while the remaining two panic and flee hand in hand. Sungwoo immediately orders his skeleton soldiers to cut off their escape and restrain them. This time, he deliberately gives his command aloud, so everyone can witness his control over the battlefield. He wants the others to understand that he is managing the situation, and that defeating the boss together will be far easier than forcing him to carry everyone alone. Sungwoo activates the thief's dagger skill on his skeleton soldiers and equips the wild bracelet to raise their defense. Combined with the dirty buff effects, the goblins pose no real threat. Still, Sungwoo understands that this world will not contain only goblins, and stronger monsters are inevitable. Jin-suk's followers begin to realize that Sungwoo has the power to command undead minions. Those hiding in the cafe also begin to see hope through Sungwoo's overwhelming strength. One goblin manages to slip past two skeletons in a desperate attempt to escape. Sungwoo charges forward and hurls his spear, skewering the goblin through its body. He feels relieved that the throw succeeds, knowing failure would have embarrassed him in front of everyone. Once the battle ends, people rush out cheering. Sungwoo's dominance leaves them awestruck, even prompting curiosity about why someone like him studies literature. He searches the area afterward but finds no dropped equipment, concluding that ordinary monsters do not yield loot. Still, after killing 20 monsters, he receives a lucky ticket and learns that he is the 34th person out of 100 to achieve this milestone. The ticket does not appear in his inventory, leaving its use unclear. The skeleton soldiers return sluggishly. When Sungwoo praises them, all four visibly brighten with joy. He leads them back toward the cafe, where Jin-suk cowers below. Jin-suk's expression twists with humiliation and rage. Soon, everyone regathers inside the cafe. Jin-suk announces that the group is trapped by powerful magic and that the only escape is to defeat the boss hidden somewhere in the building. Silence falls over the crowd. Even a single goblin has terrified them, making the thought of a boss unbearable. Sungwoo explains that only 2 hours remain and that whatever follows will not end well. Since the enemy is a boss, fighting alone is not an option. A young man at the back reveals that he has seen the boss while fleeing to the rooftop. He describes it as a massive monster that crushed a professor's head. Sungwoo prepares to leave and asks if anyone wishes to accompany him. As expected, no one steps forward or even meets his gaze. Hanho quietly suggests staying behind. Sungwoo gently refuses, explaining that Hanho is necessary to buff the skeleton soldiers. Hanho even offers to surrender his dagger in exchange for remaining behind, but Sungwoo rejects the idea outright. At that moment, a girl steps forward and voices her doubts about the group's chances. She criticizes the others for panicking over weak monsters and introduces herself as Jisoo, a tiger hunter. To her, Sungwoo's skeleton soldiers are far more valuable than the frightened crowd. Her intense gaze keeps everyone frozen in place. Sungwoo admits inwardly that he is unsure of victory as well, since no one knows the boss's strength or abilities. He asks Jin-suk for his opinion. Jin-suk shamelessly declares that he will stay behind to protect the students. The crowd responds with visible disgust. Sungwoo does not argue and allows Jin-suk to remain, telling him to enjoy playing leader while defending the cafe. A team forms consisting of Sungwoo, Jisoo, and Hanho, though Hanho is clearly unhappy. As they move, Sungwoo warns Hanho to stay alert. Soon, Jisoo spots two goblins charging from below, while another group blocks their path ahead. Sungwoo signals for Jisoo and Hanho to handle the rear. Before he finishes signaling, Jisoo charges forward aggressively. She decapitates one goblin in a single slash, then immediately stabs the second through the stomach. The two enemies fall before Hanho even fully registers what happened. Jisoo pauses to catch her breath, while Hanho stands stunned, realizing how outmatched he is. Sungwoo, ahead of them, finishes off 5 goblins on his own. Hanho awkwardly admits his weakness, likening Jisoo to a legendary general. Continuing upward, they find Professor Huang slumped against the hallway wall, covered in wounds and weeping in pain. He laments that all his students are dead and blames himself. Sungwoo comforts him, allowing the professor to explain what happened. After separating from Sungwoo, the group reached the research lab safely. Believing that staying put was unsafe, Professor Huang led the students to the rooftop, following guidance from a survival manual. There, they encountered a terrifying monster, and every student who trusted him was killed. With his final strength, Professor Huang warns Sungwoo never to go to the rooftop and urges him to survive. He then passes away. Sungwoo's expression darkens, his rage barely restrained. Immediately afterward, a side quest appears, tasking him with avenging the professor by killing the boss. The system warns that his choice may influence his destiny. Sungwoo reflects on the meaning of destiny and curses the cruelty of their suffering. Despite the warning, he walks straight toward the rooftop. Hanho questions whether confronting the boss is truly necessary. The skeleton soldiers stop and watch Sungwoo closely. His eyes fill with unwavering determination as he opens the door and steps into the final boss's domain. The rooftop is a scene of pure carnage. Blood is smeared across the ground, and goblins move among scattered human corpses, dragging bodies as if collecting trophies. The sight forces Sungwoo to grimace, unable to suppress his anger and disgust. Hanho freezes, his expression empty, as he points into the distance. One goblin is dragging away the body of a young man Hanho recognizes as his classmate. Jisoo tightens her grip on her sword, her body tense with the urge to charge forward and slaughter the goblins immediately. Sungwoo stops her at once. He knows they are not strong enough yet to recklessly engage, and he needs to evaluate the battlefield first. At the same time, he recognizes this as a necessary trial to strengthen the group. After a brief assessment, he signals for them to advance. A goblin notices their presence and immediately alerts the others. Within moments, the entire goblin group gathers before them, weapons raised. Though each goblin stands under a meter tall, their collective presence radiates menace, terrifying Hanho. Fear grips him, and he instinctively considers hiding. Sungwoo, however, has no intention of retreating. Facing danger head-on is the only way to grow stronger. Sungwoo activates the Wild Bracelet. All skeleton soldiers gain an increase in damage output and attack speed. The two sides collide in a chaotic melee. One goblin thrusts its knife into the gap between a skeleton's arm bones, but before it can capitalize on the strike, it is hacked apart. Sungwoo joins the fight directly, using fallen bodies as cover while launching precise attacks. Jisoo's strength becomes undeniable as she cleaves through goblins effortlessly, cutting them down as if chopping firewood. Hanho remains pressed into a corner, clutching his knife. He had believed his class would be useful, only to feel completely helpless. Panicking, he hurls a dagger toward the fray. The blade pierces a goblin's head, killing it instantly. Realization dawns on him. He throws another dagger, then another, and none of them miss. Confidence fills his eyes as he recognizes this as his true fighting style. Meanwhile, the goblins continue to weaken under the influence of Death Aura, their overall stats reduced by 30%. Realizing they are outmatched, they begin to flee en masse. Suddenly, a deafening noise erupts from near a wardrobe. A massive goblin emerges, its face bestial, its body covered in thick fur resembling a lion's mane. It carries an enormous pestle-like weapon. The smaller goblins immediately discard their weapons and kneel before it. The scene makes it clear that this creature is the Goblin Chief, the boss they must defeat. With a protector present, the remaining goblins regain their morale and charge once more. Sungwoo understands that the fight will only grow more difficult. He commits fully, ordering the skeleton soldiers to kill every enemy in sight. One skeleton, already grappling with a goblin on the ground, breaks away and rushes the Goblin Chief. In an instant, it is smashed apart, its spirit dispersing completely. Sungwoo immediately summons a replacement. The chief targets another skeleton nearby and destroys it just as easily. Sungwoo's mana reserves drop rapidly, now depleted by more than 2/3, though the abundance of corpses allows him to continue summoning. Suddenly, several daggers fly through the air and embed themselves in the Goblin Chief's bicep. Hanho strikes a bold pose, deliberately provoking the monster. The chief shakes its arm, dislodging the daggers effortlessly, and enters a frenzy, enraged by the taunt. It charges after Hanho, swinging its massive weapon. Hanho sprints toward the skeleton soldiers, relieved when he reaches them. The relief lasts only an instant. The Goblin Chief swings once, wiping out the entire group of skeletons in a single blow. One skeleton is sent flying into the air. Seizing the opportunity, it dives downward and drives its dagger into the chief. The chief roars, then kicks the skeleton away with devastating force, shattering it completely. Jisoo uses the opening to circle behind the chief and carve a deep slash across its back. The blow forces the monster to pause briefly as it struggles against the pain. She flicks the blood from her blade with cold composure, having been pushed to fight seriously for the first time. Sungwoo cannot help but admire her talent. Every movement is sharp and precise. Without her, he is certain they would have already died. Sungwoo steadies himself and recalculates his approach. He summons additional skeleton soldiers and orders them to surround the Goblin Chief alongside Jisoo. They attack from behind, not to deal damage, but to disrupt its vision. Just as the chief turns, Sungwoo hurls the pig-slaughtering knife in his hand. The blade cuts through the thick fur and embeds itself in the chief's face, tearing open a deep wound. The Goblin Chief howls in agony and vents its fury on a nearby skeleton, obliterating it. Sungwoo summons another replacement, but his mana continues to dwindle. The chief suddenly points at each skeleton soldier in turn, appearing to laugh mockingly. Sungwoo does not dwell on it, consumed instead by the growing fear that victory may be slipping away. Without warning, the Goblin Chief enters a berserk state. Its strength surges dramatically, forcing Sungwoo backward. If the battle continues at this pace, total annihilation is inevitable. Sungwoo knows he must deliver a decisive blow soon, and as he desperately searches for an opening, his eyes fall upon two swords lying near the Goblin Chief. The Goblin Chief moves as if enhanced by some unfair advantage. It grips a skeleton soldier's skull in one hand while using its massive pestle to block Jisoo's sword with the other. Amid the chaos, Sungwoo re-enters the battle far stronger than moments before, wielding two swords he has just collected. He signals two skeleton soldiers to block the Goblin Chief's advance, but both are nearly destroyed instantly. One sword suddenly flies through the air and is caught by a severely damaged skeleton soldier, with only one arm and one leg remaining. Using the momentum of its fall, the skeleton strikes at the Goblin Chief. Despite the precise coordination, the power gap remains vast, and the skeleton is struck down in a single blow. At that instant, a system notification appears. Because 3 swords are equipped within the party, a synergy effect activates. Warrior level 1 increases attack speed by 10% and halves weapon weight. The damaged skeleton is recognized as a unique entity and becomes a one-armed warrior for wielding a sword with its remaining hand. The Goblin Chief hesitates briefly, confused by the sudden increase in speed and pressure. Sungwoo seizes the opening, hurling a chair at the chief. Jisoo and the one-armed skeleton soldier attack simultaneously from opposite sides. The chief is forced to react to 3 threats at once. The chair slams into its body. Jisoo lands several sharp strikes, and when the one-armed skeleton soldier attacks, it is struck on the head due to insufficient speed. Suddenly, a dagger embeds itself into the arm holding the Goblin Chief's weapon. Hanho finally emerges from hiding among the rubble. As the chief struggles to pull the dagger free, Sungwoo immediately signals the one-armed skeleton soldier to attack. As the skeleton charges, Sungwoo silently acknowledges its endurance. The skeleton has survived since the classroom battle and endured countless fights. Sungwoo prepares to rush forward himself for the final strike, expecting the skeleton's sacrifice. Instead, the one-armed skeleton soldier dodges the Goblin Chief's attack with unexpected agility. The chief freezes in shock, and in the next moment, its head is severed and sent flying. The system explains that the one-armed skeleton soldier blocked 88% of the damage from the boss monster's first attack. The Goblin Chief is defeated. Sungwoo receives 2,225 gold and advances to level 3. He and Hanho remain stunned. Hanho recognizes the victorious skeleton as the same one Sungwoo originally killed using a desk and chair combination. The skeleton begins to glow and transforms, gaining new armor and an emblem on its forehead. By absorbing the Goblin Chief's magical power, it ranks up, gaining increased defense and the command attribute. Sungwoo studies the emblem and reviews his subordinates' updated stats. The command attribute enhances synergy power, allowing growth from a squad to a platoon and eventually a legion. He realizes he will need to acquire more subordinates. Hanho and Jisoo also level up. Jisoo reaches level 3, matching Sungwoo. She remains unsure about her earlier level up reward and seeks advice, but the randomness of the system offers no certainty. They can only hope for favorable results. Hanho is surprised that Sungwoo can see his card selections. When Hanho reaches level 2, he chooses a party-related skill that indirectly increases the number of skeleton soldiers Sungwoo can summon. Sungwoo's reward is the basic bone weapon crafting skill, which allows him to craft weapons from corpse bones in 4 forms: sword, hammer type, spear, or bow. Weapon quality depends on material quality, and higher skill levels unlock more options. A side quest completion notification appears for avenging the professor. Completing it grants Sungwoo a random skill and alters his destiny. The reward increases his summonable skeleton count by 1, bringing the total to 5. Despite the benefit, Sungwoo remains troubled by the idea of destiny and resolves to choose quests more carefully. A cloak falls from the sky onto Hanho. The bandit cloak increases stealth against monsters by 50%. Hanho equips it immediately, fully embracing his fighting style of hiding and throwing daggers. Jisoo receives an ignition stone, which grants weapons sharpened with it a chance to ignite when fighting beasts. Sungwoo gathers the group and prepares to return, confident the sealed door is now open. Back in the cafe, Min-soo questions Jin-suk about their future confinement. The question infuriates Jin-suk as whispers spread among the crowd, filled with regret for not following Sungwoo. When Min-soo tries to speak again, Jin-suk violently grabs him and erupts, accusing everyone of doubting him despite his claims of protection. He angrily orders them to leave and fend for themselves. The crowd is confused as Jin-suk directs them toward the rooftop, claiming they will die like Sungwoo. His repeated boasts only fuel resentment. Someone openly mocks his supposed strength and credits the rooftop fighter as their true protector. Tempers flare, and a heated argument breaks out. Jin-suk confidently declares that Sungwoo must already be dead. The sudden silence makes him smug, until a familiar presence interrupts. Jin-suk turns pale as he sees skeleton soldiers pointing swords at him. Sung-woo steps forward, exhausted by Jin-suk's behavior. After risking everything to defeat the boss, he finds Jin-suk indulging in self-importance. Sung-woo opens the door fully. Jin-suk's face drains of color as disbelief overwhelms him. He fumbles for words but is silenced by the judgmental stares of the crowd. The truth becomes undeniable. The man who claimed to be strong and protective stands fully exposed as a coward. Sung-woo leads his army of skeleton soldiers out into the open. The outside world feels unnervingly silent, devoid of any trace of monsters. He pauses to assess the surroundings before signaling everyone to move carefully and remain quiet. As they advance, they pass piles of human and monster corpses stacked together indiscriminately. The scene unsettles Sung-woo. Goblins are known to hunt in groups, and he suspects they may be hiding nearby. Han-ho suddenly notices a group of people standing not far away. Among them, a young man dressed in a white shirt raises his sword as a signal. Sung-woo studies the bloodstained weapons in their hands and concludes that they are survivors of a battle against goblins in this area. Jin-suk immediately recognizes the student council president and rushes forward eagerly. The president reacts with thinly veiled sarcasm at seeing Jin-suk still alive. Jin-suk approaches him submissively, flattering him and expressing admiration, then leans in to whisper something while glancing openly at Sung-woo. He no longer bothers hiding his attempts to slander others. The president adopts a warm, saint-like demeanor as he steps forward to introduce himself as Park Da-sung, the student council president. He claims that his group has also been working to exterminate monsters and implies that they can offer protection. The surrounding survivors appear far more willing to trust Da-sung than Jin-suk. Da-sung's gaze soon falls on Sung-woo's skeleton soldiers, and discomfort flickers across his face. Sung-woo explains that the skeletons are the result of his job card. Da-sung responds by questioning whether Sung-woo truly accepts creatures responsible for killing humans. Sung-woo immediately realizes that Da-sung is framing him as a threat. The implication is clear. If Sung-woo wishes to follow Da-sung's group, he must abandon his skeleton soldiers. Sung-woo has no intention of doing so. He has never stated any desire to follow or serve Da-sung in the first place. Da-sung continues pressing the issue, attempting to manipulate the situation by emphasizing the danger of keeping such creatures nearby. Han-ho reacts indignantly, arguing that despite their appearance, the skeletons are not as horrible as they seem. Sung-woo signals for Han-ho and the skeletons to stop reacting. With firm resolve, he makes it clear that abandoning his subordinates is impossible. Doing so would be equivalent to discarding his weapons, leaving him defenseless in this new world. Da-sung responds with thinly masked contempt, suggesting that Sung-woo has no need for them if his group offers protection. He presents an ultimatum, insisting that Sung-woo personally destroy the skeletons if he wants to join them. Before Sung-woo can respond, Jisoo steps forward decisively, drawing her sword and breaking the tension. She challenges Da-sung's authority and questions when the student council gained the right to decide everyone's fate. Da-sung recognizes her as the top student from the physical education department, though such titles hold little meaning now that the school lies in ruins. He lowers his voice, warning her to calm down and comply or face consequences. Jisoo remains unmoved. She exposes Da-sung's true nature, revealing that he embezzled hundreds of millions of won from school festival funds and that she was the one who exposed him online. The revelation visibly rattles Da-sung. With his weakness laid bare, he stops pressing them and instead issues a warning that they will die at the hands of monsters. As Sung-woo's group turns to leave, Da-sung deliberately shouts after them, claiming that without a party, they will lose synergy effects and die painfully. Sung-woo ignores the provocation and continues onward. While moving away, Sung-woo wonders why Jisoo harbors such strong hatred toward the student council. She explains that Da-sung is nothing more than garbage to her. He regularly harassed female students, and several members of her department had reported his behavior. No matter his position, trash remains trash. Sung-woo listens and nods, scanning the surroundings. Their priority is to avoid buildings and escape the area. Jisoo advises steering clear of crowded places, as monsters tend to target large groups. Sung-woo considers this and suggests taking the hill path behind the campus, which leads directly to the main gate and appears deserted. And as they proceed, the silence grows heavier, giving Han-ho a sense of unease. Suddenly, Sung-woo signals everyone to stop and remain silent, causing Han-ho's heart to pound. At the end of the stairs ahead, there is a massive figure. A bloodstained axe drags across the corpses of goblins scattered on the ground. The creature's appearance is grotesque, with a face resembling Zhu Baji and skin glowing bright red. Merely meeting its gaze is enough to inspire terror. The monster towers over them, even larger than the goblin chief, and Han-ho instinctively wants to flee. Based on Sungwoo's understanding of monster hierarchies from novels, creatures that appear after goblins are often orcs. The red orc lets out a thunderous roar and leaps toward them. Sungwoo feels no hesitation. Instead, excitement surges through him. Another powerful subordinate is about to be added to his growing collection.